Hey friends, welcome back to the Trust Issues Podcast. I'm Erica, and today we're going to talk about preparing for a home birth. By now, you might already know that I've had 2 home births myself. I am recording in the home right now where I've birthed both of my baby boys, and they were 2 of the most magical experiences that I've personally had, and I felt called to home birth pretty much as soon as I found out I was pregnant with my first. But I get a lot of questions around home birth, how to know if it's right for you, how to start doing some research around it, asking questions. And I just wanted to share a little bit of my own personal insights. Now, none of this is medical advice. I am not a medical provider. So please do your own due diligence and just tune in also to your own intuition and to your own inner wisdom of what is right for me and my baby and my family. You will know the answer to that question. And I do encourage you to advocate for that, what you desire to experience. It was something that I felt very strongly on, and so that is why I pursued it. But if you are wanting some of the practical take homes around how to find a midwife, how to start prepping your body, how to set up your space, making sure you have the right support team in place, I know that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and I want to give you some resources for how you can feel very equipped to make this decision. I think a lot of people think that this is only for the super crunchy. Some people don't even know it's an option. But for me, I do believe that a home birth can be a very safe and empowering and transformative experience. So whether you're considering it or you're just curious and you just want to listen, let's dive into it. Welcome to the Trust Issues Podcast, the show where we question everything society tells us about how to live, work, eat, and be. I'm Erica Auckland, a mom, entrepreneur, and advocate for living life on your own terms. Here we challenge the status quo, from the food we feed our families to the way that we build wealth and well-being. You'll hear unfiltered conversations with everyone from farmers, financial experts, and everyday people who are doing life differently, all with one goal: to help you live healthier, freer, and more abundant. If you've ever felt like there's more to life than following the crowd, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. So the first thing you need to do is decide whether a home birth is right for you. This is where doing your own due diligence around what key health factors or risk factors might be involved on whether or not you're a good candidate. Generally, if you are a healthy woman with no previous health conditions, you would be a great candidate, but only you and a midwife can decide that. So I would encourage you, the first thing to do as soon as you pee on a stick and you get a positive and you're thinking, I want to do a home birth, is go and seek out local midwives in your area who have been well reviewed and have plenty of experience. My own midwives have worked in hospital settings for decades before becoming midwives, so I felt very confident in working with them. And between all of them, there's many, many decades of experience in general. But ultimately, you can't really know if you're a good candidate by listening to this podcast without, maybe perhaps talking to a midwife and just getting some of that health history out of the way and making sure that all of that is good to go. I mean, I don't want to say that to be a downer, but you can't really find that out through listening to somebody else's stories. Again, like if I'm healthy, check, I'm good. Let's keep diving into this topic. But I would say that's pretty much the first thing you're going to want to do is go and interview some midwives and talk to some people. There is a whole nother conversation around free birth. Now, this is not a free birth conversation. Free birth for me was not something I felt called to do. It was not something that I truly felt comfortable doing. And that is just because I'm a little bit more, I would say, risk aware. And I just knew that when I was going to be in that state of giving birth, that anything could happen. And I wanted to make sure I had a team of support around me. I've always been a huge proponent of having coaches and, experts who could lend their wisdom, who have gone before me and who know perhaps more than I do. I think there's always an element of, not outsourcing your health and your well-being to other people. However, in this instance, I was very confident that I wanted to have a really solid birth team. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing in terms of, deciding if this is right for you is what are some of your personal values? What is your mindset around it? If you're kind of curious around it and you kind of don't really believe and you're a little skeptical, it's probably not for you. You don't want to be in a place where you feel fear or you feel like, oh my gosh, what if anything's going to go wrong? if you already think that, you're going to want to be in a setting that's going to make you feel safe. Ultimately, at the end of the day, when it comes to birth and giving birth, there is actually something called the law of the sphincter. The sphincter law is a concept by Ina May Gaskin, and she explains that our sphincter muscles, so your cervix, your vagina, they are more likely to open when the person feels safe and relaxed and you're in a private environment. And if something makes you feel threatened or afraid or stressed, it's going to impact your opening and it's going to impact birth ultimately. And so I truly believe that there's an element of where you feel most confident in where you're going to birth, that's where you should birth. So in general, you're probably going to feel more safe if there's less interruptions, there's a more calming environment. You have already met your birth team, you've already prepared your mind ahead of time, you've really worked on your levels of cortisol in your body and really understanding how to breathe and how to relax and release your jaw and all these things that really help with preparing for birth. But for you, if you feel very solid that doing it at home could lead to a negative outcome, perhaps it's not for you. However, if you're let's bring it on, I want to do it at home, you trust your body, you know that your body is meant to do this, and you feel that giving birth in your home setting where you can have a control over the environment, the people there, then home birth is incredible. It's absolutely amazing. And those are some of my personal values. I wanted full autonomy. I wanted safety. I wanted to feel home. And I wanted to feel that comfort of having the things around me that were very familiar, as well as knowing every single person who's going to be in the room with my birth team. I think the other thing as well is, what is your partner or the family dynamic? If your spouse, if your husband is on board, let's go, babe, you've got this, that's going to be probably a way better experience versus if they're not. And I think that's where you would want to do a lot of, have a conversation, remind him that this is your birth, your body. But to get on the same page, I think is really key, because there will probably be an element of, if you are giving birth and the contractions are coming and, you're in a really intense spot and you're worried about him and what he's thinking. And oh my gosh, what if something goes wrong? That's going to be something that probably won't be a fun dynamic. But for me, I will say my husband was an incredible support. He was someone who from the beginning supported me. And when I said I want to do home birth, he's like, great, babe, let's do it. You've got this. And, I will say my husband was literally my coach through my entire birth, both of my births. He was my rock. He was my coach. I not only physically was holding on to him, but emotionally and mentally, he held me up. And I could not have done it without him. And so I think that, if you are feeling very on board together, I think home birth can be incredible for you. And both of you feel confident in that, do it, because it honestly is an incredible experience. So that's kind of deciding on whether it's right for you. You can only decide that. Once you've decided that you are going to be having a home birth, and you have weighed all the pros and cons, you've had the tough conversations, you've navigated, some of those values that you have and really understood where you land, and your spouse is on board, and you also know that you're not at risk, health risk for a home birth. Now it's time to build your support team and your birth team. So a couple people to consider, obviously having a midwife, perhaps you want a doula, your birth partner, your spouse, and then, working within the midwife team. So I worked with a midwifery company here in Tennessee, and with that comes your midwife and your nurse and your care all throughout pregnancy up until birth. And so for me, I chose who I was going to work with. I worked with the same midwives for my second birth that I did my first, because it was a great experience. And I heard of them through other friends who had home birthed. And when I had heard they had successful, great home births, and they had loved their home birth team, and there was several people that had glowing reviews, I was very on board and very excited to give birth with them. So I felt very cared for. I felt like my experience was amazing. I also want to say that you may choose a midwife team or a provider, and then in the middle of your pregnancy feel like this isn't right, I don't feel this. That's okay. You can explore looking for someone else, but I do feel that this is a very important partnership that you are creating with your birth team. And if you don't vibe, it's going to be a tricky situation. I feel that I felt so safe with my providers. I knew that I was in great hands. And, my midwives caught both of my babies because I was on all fours pushing with everything that I had. And so once, I look back and like this midwife is holding my baby, like literally caught my baby. I'm like, that's literally a symbolism of how much I trusted them. And so I encourage you to have that. Now, a doula is a little bit different from, it's obviously very different from a midwife. A doula is going to be more of your emotional support. This is someone who will come the day of the birth. They also might support you ahead of time leading up to the birth, but they're going to be there to ensure that you and your spouse are feeling comfortable, are feeling nourished, maybe rubbing your back, maybe helping you with positions, getting you water, getting you snacks, maybe doing some laundry, helping take care of the kids. Like, this is a person who is there for you throughout the entire birth, where the midwife is making sure that the baby is great, the baby's okay, the baby, obviously mama too, but the midwife has a little bit more of a medical focus, and your doula is a little bit more of an emotional support focus. And I personally felt that that was an incredible experience. You can have a doula and a midwife as well at a birthing center, or perhaps even in a hospital setting. But in a home birth situation, I was very grateful to have both midwife, also had a nurse, and as well as my doula there. I had a great experience with both births. My second midwife was someone who kind of became like family for us, and someone that I really trusted with my family and my kids, and was someone that I couldn't imagine anyone else being there for me during that birth. Like, she was incredible. So, I would say, like, if you feel like your spouse is going to need some extra support during that day, like, definitely get a doula. If you feel like you're going to need some extra support, get a doula. Like, I honestly think there's no wrong in having that additional support. And then obviously you have your birth partner, who is going to be your spouse, or perhaps a friend, or if it's going to be someone in your family. For me, it was my husband, and my husband was there holding my hand, holding me up, holding me as I squeezed the living daylights out of him for every contraction. Which is so, like, at the time of this recording, it's like I'm 8 months postpartum, and I'm like, I'm trying to remember what it all felt like. And it was insane, but I like don't even remember. I feel like I blacked out. Like, you like literally forget. But having that person, that is your support. Like, that is the closest person to you. So I think that that's really key to make sure that you are, maybe take a class together or watch birth videos together, just making sure that that person is going to be there for you, and that they also feel like they know how to support you. Because in that situation, it's very primal, and some people just go into a primal state, which could be fight or flight, could be, you just never know. And I think that's where preparation comes in. And we'll talk about that in a second. So those are like your key people. Now, you would also, with a very experienced and legitimate midwife, have a backup medical plan. For me and my births, I always felt confident that everything was going to be fine. But if for any reason something happened, the likelihood of being transferred, is always there. I mean, the possibility of being transferred is always there to a hospital, and which is totally okay, because, that's not a failure. That just means like maybe something needs to be looked at or, taken care of. And a good midwife is trained. My midwives taught me this. A good midwife is trained to see yellow flags, not red flags. So you should never be transferred to a hospital when it's too late. If you have a really skilled midwife, they will be able to see that within you ahead of time. And my midwives were always very upfront about like, okay, like make sure that we know what hospital you go to, all those things. All that is in your birth plan with your midwife team. And, that might be something where you want to go meet the doctor ahead of time, right? If that makes you feel confident. I never did that. I never went and met a hospital team, but, that's always something that you could consider. The next thing is then preparing your home and your birth space. So, this is going to be a little bit more like the weeks and the days coming into the actual birth. But I feel that so many people ask me this all the time. Like, I don't want to give birth at home, or what if I give birth at home and it's a mess and there's stuff everywhere? Like, your midwives and your doula will take care of all of that. Like, literally, they cleaned it all up. They do the laundry. They tell you how to prepare your space, putting out different pads. You like cover your bed. You have all these things that are there. Your midwives have all of the tools that they're going to need for you and baby, but you're responsible for getting the birth pool, the towels, some pads, if you want some lighting, some music, some candles, whatever the vibe is that you want. I always planned my last two births. I planned to birth in my tub, but that never happened. I've never had a water birth for either of them. And sad to say, I wish I'm like maybe my third I'll get that, but your birth pool will also be something you can discuss with your midwife, and they can help you get the right one and make sure you have the right attachments. You have to use a specific hose for all of that. And, maybe water filters, all those things where you connect it to your current tub or your shower, all those little details, they will help you do that. But, I will say that think about where you feel the most safe. It's so interesting because where I birthed both of my kids was literally like between my bathroom and my bed. It's kind of like this little like nook and cranny area where I just wanted to be like safe. And it just felt like very kind of like cave-like to me. Like I just felt like it was the innermost part of my bedroom and it felt safe. And I birthed on the floor for both of my kids and there was pads and all those things around. But, in terms of lessons learned for this, I would say if you are, starting to contract, like just have all those things ready. Make sure that you know where everything is. Like don't just wait. Having those things set up. I've had many friends who've had home births and they never got to the tub because things just happened and they just never got in there. So having all those things prepared ahead of time in just one place will just probably make it easier for you. And I think for me, the biggest thing was the mental and physical preparation. So for the first birth, it was very mental. It was very like, how am I going to navigate it if an unexpected challenge comes up? If we have to be transferred to the hospital, how am I going to navigate it if things get really hard and I feel like I can't do it? And now that I've done it, I know that I can do it. So it's a different story. But if it's your first, I did a lot of stuff like hypnotherapy, breath work, visualization. I took a course called the Pain-Free Birth course by Karen Wallen, and that was an incredible course, which we can also link for you. But it is something that helped me understand like the physiological process that my body was going to go through. And I felt that that was so impactful for me mentally because I'm the type of person who just like wants to know. I also watched a lot of birth videos. I read the book by Ina May Gaskin, and her book is just like absolutely incredible. Ina May's Guide to Childbirth. And she also has Ina May's Guide to Breastfeeding, which I highly recommend as well. It was so, so good to read so many positive stories about birth and also just like understanding all the different like normal things, normal variations of normal that can occur when you are giving birth. Because for me, I just realized that I was very much in my head. Like I was the type of person who was very much like I needed head knowledge. I needed to like know more to feel more in control and to feel more prepared. And maybe you're not like that at all, but that was for me something that made me feel so much more calm. Now I realize that was a little bit probably of a coping mechanism because my body does know what to do. However, when it was my first, I knew that that information equipped me. Now it was a little bit more of a physical preparation for my second. My second birth was a little bit more of preparing my pelvis, my breathing, relaxing, lowering cortisol, relaxing my jaw, doing stretches, doing squats. I did a lot of pelvic floor stuff. I worked out all throughout my pregnancy. I think I probably, looking back, would have done a little bit more pelvic floor stuff for both of them. I think you could always do more pelvic floor, but time is a thing. So I think that, in terms of how I managed the actual day of my first birth, it was a lot of head knowledge. It was a lot of like mindset. I was also working out during my whole first pregnancy as well as my second, but I think that was just so much more of a comfort versus the second time around, it was more of a thing around the physical. Just like, I'm carrying a toddler, also being pregnant, my body's growing. All of those things were a factor in me feeling my best for birth. And also, I think the role of your family, I think that this is a huge aspect of deciding whether, home birth is right for you. And that's just like being open. I think ahead of time, do you know how you want to be supported? Having those conversations with your spouse, with your husband, with your birth partner, the person who's going to be there with you, making sure that you voice your concerns to your midwives as well. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who feel like they can't talk to their doctors or they can't talk to their providers. And you have to be able to openly say, like, I don't like this, I like this. Hey, I'm a super physical touch person. So during labor, I need someone to put pressure on my back. Like, that's going to help me. Or like, hold my hand. Like, those are things that you should be able to and need to verbalize in order, I think, to have a really exceptional experience. Now, everyone is different in birth. than what they think they're going to be. Okay. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have this like beautiful, peaceful birth. No, like I'm a straight animal when I give birth. I don't know why. I'm just like full primal. Like I'm like yelling and screaming and like not screaming, but like groaning and like moaning. And I'm like grunting. And it's like very like deep and like just trying to breathe this baby out. And that's how I am. And that's just who I am. So I think, everything is one way until it actually happens, right? So just being open to things changing. And I think that's where you can discuss with your spouse, your most safe person. If things change in this way, here's how I want it to be handled. Hey, if things change in this way, here's how I'd like it to be addressed or shifted or whatever. And that is something that can just help you ahead of time with preparing your birth plan. One thing I also did with my first doula was my birth plan. She asked questions like, do you want to have delayed cord clamping? Absolutely. Do you want to have, anyone catch your baby, or do you want to catch your baby? Do you like when people touch you, or do you not like people when touch you? All these ahead of time, setting boundaries and expectations, I think is super healthy, and it's going to be very beneficial to you when you're in the moment and having a home birth. And I think the more you can just verbalize and talk and process, and there's no over talking or over speaking when it comes to you preparing for this day. That is the most magical, incredible day. And you don't know exactly what's going to happen, and you can't control it all, and you have to relinquish that desire to control. But if you're able to process it all ahead of time as much as you can to the knowledge that you have in this current moment, I think you'll be like it'll set you up for so much more success versus you just being like, I don't know, like I'm going to internalize everything. Do not internalize anything. Ina May's book, Guide to Childbirth, in her book, she has so many stories, and you have to read these stories. But there was many stories, and I remember this one specifically about like this woman was super delayed in her birth. Come to find out, she had like these things that she had never said to her husband. Like there were kind of like, they were some discrepancies, or they were like, I don't know if there was something going on in their marriage that was like happening. And essentially what the midwife realized was that she was holding back, and she was like kind of stopping her own birth from happening because she had all this unresolved conflict. And once she was able to go and like actually speak to her husband and like say what she needed to say, and I think they even like went and like to another room and had a moment together, she literally had the baby like very soon after. That is not uncommon. That is not uncommon to have an emotional or spiritual component to birth. I mean, it's actually very biologically normal and expected that there might be something that you need to process ahead of time. And maybe, if there's something traumatic that you've gone through in your life, I think that if you're planning on having a birth in general, not just home birth, but in general, is going and processing that with a safe person, with therapist, with someone who can help you resolve some of those traumas. Because I know for me, I had some traumas with both of my kids, and I verbalized the heck out of it. And I'm notoriously an over talker, why I have a podcast. So I honestly think like that saved me. And I just like was able to kind of get that on the table and like exhale and move on. So highly recommend. The next is your post-birth support. So like if you're going to have a home birth, amazing. But also, what are you going to set up for yourself when it comes to your immediate postpartum care? Do you have any family to come by? Do you have any postpartum doulas that can come and support? Are you going to have meals prepared? I'm managing some of that. For me, for my first, I didn't know a lot of things around like breastfeeding and body work and how important some of those things were going to be to our experience. But for my second, I was much more supported and much more prepared in that I asked people ahead of time. I had already had an IBCLC breastfeeding consultant on hand so that I could text as soon as the baby came. I also had my chiropractor who could come as soon as the baby was born to do some body work to help just like unwind a little bit and help me as well with recovery. I was very, very nervous about breastfeeding for my second because I was not able to breastfeed my first. I know a lot now that I didn't know then, right? But I should have fought for it more. I should have had some team members already there to support me, and I just didn't. And it's just, okay, it's okay. But, that's something that I kind of grieve a little bit in terms of not preparing ahead of time for those things. Breastfeeding on this second round has been the most redemptive experience. I'm so grateful that I'm doing it. It's the best thing ever. I never want to stop. Like, I'm so glad that I can do it. And it didn't just happen. Like, I had to work for it. I honestly, The first couple days was very, very challenging. He was chomping on me. There was like, I was completely, nipples were literally shredded. Like it was really rough, but I just remember being like, I know what's on the other side of this because I had support and I had some people who were able to help me with this. Also, Ina May's book, Guide to Breastfeeding, is really great as well. But just having a support system, around your meals, your current family. Do you have current kids? Can you make some freezer meals ahead of time? Like some of those things are going to be just super impactful for you. And, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to having a home birth, if you're gonna birth at home, it's a lot of just nuance. And I think it's just you really asking yourself, like, what feels right for me? And for me, I was like, I already knew in my gut, I already knew in my spirit that this is what my path was going to be, what I knew I wanted it to be. And I fought for that. And I wouldn't say fight necessarily. I didn't really have to fight, but I would have fought for it, especially coming out on the other side and experiencing what I did. And I think a lot of people will have their first birth, in a birthing center or in a hospital for their first, and then they have a home birth, which is totally okay as well. It's just deciding what's right for you, and it's deciding what fits for you. And at the end of the day, like, you get to choose what is true for you. If you believe that home birth is going to be scary and it's going to be impossible, then you're right. And if you believe that it's going to be deeply transformative and it's going to be deeply healing, you're also right. And I will say that from experience, it's true. And that it was honestly two of the most beautiful, insane, incredible, challenging, healing experiences of my life. I think that if I were to look back around home birth, I think the only thing I wish I would have prepared more for is doing a little bit more body work for my second, just around opening up of my pelvis. So with my first, I had a pretty consistent, intense birth. I think it was just very to be expected. It was like a 16-hour labor. With my second, it was 5 hours, but it would have probably been a lot faster and easier had I prepared my pelvis. I am doing a lot of work right now around untucking my pelvis and opening up my pelvis and opening up my body and opening up my rib cage. You probably see me if you're watching multiple times. I try to sit up, and I'm trying to because I'm trying to really position my body in a better way, in a different way. And I think that really did impact my second birth, just around how bruised and how wrecked my pubic bone was after my second birth. I could not walk for a week after because the contractions were so intense and he came so fast once I was in active labor. And that is one thing that I am doing, and I'm doing to prepare for when I eventually get pregnant for my third and for my third birth. And it'll be very interesting to see the difference. Something I'm exploring right now is something called bowspring. And bowspring is this practice of, I would say it's a kind of like a yoga. If you're trying to really figure out layman terms of what it is, but it's essentially this method around aligning your body in a more curvature way, a dynamic posture in this it's called a double S curve, where all of us are basically a C curve. We're all like this because we're all on our phones. We're all on computers. And what I'm finding is that, my gosh, holding babies, breastfeeding, all these things, my body is it feels like I'm in a C curve. Let's just say that. And I think that really there's an element of rib cage, hips, definitely, your neck and your head, because how that connects to your jaw, and then your jaw connects to your pelvis, all of it is connected. I think that that's a huge element that I am also really if I could tell you to prepare ahead of time for your own home birth, your own birth in general, that's something I'm currently exploring right now. But I hope this episode is insightful for you. Let me know in the comments if you are planning for a home birth. If you have questions, send me a message, send me a DM. I'm cheering you on. If you listen to this and you still decide it's not for you right now, that's totally okay too. No judgment. I'm not one of those people who are home birth or nothing. I think at the end of the day, it's your birth. You get to choose. You get to feel empowered and incredible. Your body was designed to do this. And I think when you put trust in it and you really allow your body to expand and be the powerful thing that it is, what it can accomplish as a female body is like incredible, that we can birth children. We can literally push these babies out of our pelvis. Like, it's crazy. Like, that in itself is a huge feat. So I'm cheering you on. Thanks for listening to this episode. If you love this episode, leave a review, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.